Shabbat Shalom, everybody. Welcome, welcome. Find a place to sit. We begin on page 30, Hine Matov. How good it is and how sweet for all of us to gather together. Thank you especially to the members of our CBST Bespoke Community Chorus for bringing such glorious harmonies through your masks to this beautiful setting of Hine Matov by the great Solomon Solzer. It is something very special that we look forward to on this Shabbat of all Shabbatot. We want to welcome each and every one of you to CBST, those who are joining us in our sanctuary, all of you who join us from all around the world. We know we have several time zones represented. If you're joining us online and it's a part of your online Shabbat practice, please, by all means, introduce yourself in the chat. Our intrepid greeter, Sharon Golub, she of the lightning fast fingers, will make sure that you are warmly welcomed. And I'm wondering, is there anybody in the building tonight for whom this is your very first time at CBST, or if you are coming home after a very long time away? If you would be so kind to stand so I can see where you are, or to wave at me enthusiastically from your seat. That is also. I see some of our regulars. I see some people for whom it is your first time. You who rose, where are you coming from? A guest from California. Welcome, welcome. And also guests from here. That's good too. Anyone on this side? Yes, the one who's waving at me. Where are you coming from tonight? Yes, you, my dear. From London. Amazing. You're winning the prize so far. Anyone else for whom it is your first time or you're coming back after a long time? I would be remiss, of course, if I did not mention that sitting in the front row tonight is our beloved cantor Steve Zeidenberg. On his one Shabbat off from his pulpit in Vermont, he comes home to spend it with us, and we get to hear his beautiful, beautiful voice from the Kahal. Friends, he is on vacation. He is on a very well-deserved vacation. And it's so nice to have you here. We miss you. We love you. It is an extraordinary Shabbat that we mark tonight. It is a memorial. It is a commemoration. It is a celebration. On this Shabbat, our annual German-Austrian Synagogue Music Shabbat, a special brand of celebration that I only ever know about at CBST because it comes from the genius mind of our music director and the culture of appreciation for music of all kinds and the glorious tapestried history of Jewish music that has been built, part of the culture at CBST. That when the anniversary of the Kristallnacht pogroms, when the anniversary of the Night of Broken Glass occurs, this being the 82nd year, we honor the loss, the immense impact that this had on worldwide Jewry and especially Ashkenazi Jewry by glorifying the art, the love, the beautiful, beautiful contributions of these German and Austrian synagogues, specifically to the history of Jewish music, specifically to the history of world music. It cannot be understated. This glorious golden age of composition, of choral singing, and the sound of people praying in these synagogues. This is what we seek to recapture this Shabbat. This is what we seek to recapture year after year when we mark this Shabbat on our calendar. And it does make more keen the sharp and jagged edges of the loss of this incredible chapter of Jewish history. And yet this is the only place I know where we lift these voices high, where we bring them into our lexicon. We live through them. They live through us. Tonight, by way of introduction, I know for so many in the room that Kristallnacht is a part of your family's history. I know for so many this is a story that is told and retold. I wanted to give just a few bare details of the destruction that was experienced before we move just one step back, one step prior into the beauty of the world that existed that we bring to life tonight. On the night of November 9th, 1938, violent anti-Jewish demonstrations and unprecedented pogrom broke out across Germany, Austria, and the Sudetenland region of Czechoslovakia. This November pogrom, carried out with the help of the most up-to-date communication technology, was the most modern pogrom in the history of anti-Jewish persecution and an overture to the step-by-step extirpation of the Jewish people in Europe. Over 48 hours during the night of November 9th through 10th, violent mobs spurred by anti-Semitic declarations from Nazi officials destroyed hundreds of synagogues, burned and desecrated Jewish religious artifacts. Acting on orders from the Gestapo headquarters, police officers and firefighters did nothing to prevent the destruction. All told, approximately 7,500 Jewish-owned businesses, homes, and schools were plundered. Their windows were shattered, leading to the German name of this pogrom as Kristallnacht, the night of broken glass. 91 Jews were murdered. An additional 30,000 Jewish men were arrested and sent to concentration camps. In just a few hours overnight, 1,400 synagogues across Germany and Austria were torched. Nazi officials immediately claimed that the Jews themselves were to blame for these riots, and a fine of 1 billion Reichsmarks, about $400 million at 1938 rates, was imposed on the German Jewish community. Kristallnacht was a turning point in the history of the Third Reich, marking the shift from anti-Semitic rhetoric and legislation to violent and aggressive anti-Jewish measures that would culminate with the Holocaust. We cannot tell this story enough. We see echoes of it, we see shards of it in the anti-Semitic experiences that perhaps we ourselves have lived through, the ones that left their scars on our families of origin, the people who we call our families of choice, whose stories are beloved by us that we carry forward. And yet, to do justice, to do honor to this story, we sing. We share the music, we share words of song. Tonight you'll hear, instead of our traditional drasha, a devar shira, a teaching of music, a story, a mystery that will be told by our beloved music director and our cantorial intern. And throughout the service, this is an opportunity for us to immerse ourselves in a living picture, so that when we leave this space, we carry the story forward, and it has no end. Tonight, to open our service, I'd like to invite anyone who is a descendant of German, Austrian, Hungarian, Czechoslovakian, anyone who can trace their origin story back to this incredible community. Please come and join us on the bima. We ask that you stand a reasonable distance from one another as CBST member Rick Landman lights the candles. Our blessing is on page 38. And for those who are able, we ask you to come back here so that everybody online can see this incredible community within a community that has gathered tonight.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu lehadlik ner shel Shabbat.
Amen. We thank you each, a glittering jewel from one part of the treasury of the entire Jewish world. Thank you for bringing light to our community tonight. You can have a seat unless for over a decade it has been our honor to listen as Rick Landman shares some of the story of his family and the legacy that he carries, and the very artifact that he brings to share with us each night on our German-Austrian Music Shabbat over the years.
Growing up in Queens, in New York City in the 1950s, my grandmother and my father would often say to me, "Ricky, you know it could happen here too." I thought he was crazy. Losing a democracy in America was just totally not conceivable. But then, and I'm going to be channeling my father, "Ricky, we Jews since 1871 had all our civil rights. We thought we were German. Your mother's father fought in World War I for the Kaiser. We didn't think anything would happen November 9th of 1923 when those crazy people with Hitler and his beer hall putsch, we didn't think this was going to grow into anything." Then comes 1933. And No insurrection, using the democracy, following the rules and manipulating. All of a sudden, between 33 and 35, Ricky, we lost all our civil rights. We were no longer citizens in our country. They told us to leave, but we had no place to go. If you married someone and they weren't Jewish, you were no longer married. And then from 35 to 38, on that night of the morning of Kristallnacht, my father and grandfather went to Dachau. And then it was, Ricky, what could we do? Go to our neighbors? They were the ones throwing the stones. Go to the police? They were burning our shul. The Gestapo came and took us and brought us to Dachau. There was no one there to help us anymore. That's when we knew we had to leave, but no country would take us. So what I'm saying to us all now, when we study history, we have to study from like 1923 to 1945 to really understand how a civilized country, using their racial theories of one group being superior to everyone else, could nibble away at a democracy and then take away all your rights within like 2 or 3 years. Himmler started the Committee to Combat Homosexuality and Abortion. These ideas are not new. So the lessons that I've been giving, and it's since 1992 at CVST, we've had a Kristallnacht program, and I try to give a lesson each year. The lesson again is, it could happen here, but we have to study history just like the other side studies history. We have to strengthen our institutions. We have to understand propaganda and the big lie, and using a scapegoat to make other people feel better and go along. And that's the lesson that I'm giving you. Good Shabbos.
A real Yeki. He kept to 3 minutes, just like we asked him to. Rick, thank you so much for this and for every year. And for every Friday that you stood outside of the Islamic Center of NYU, week after week, month after month, and year after year, greeting the people who became your friends as they entered their house of prayer for Juma, saying you hold a sign that says, and you can correct me if I mistranslate it, but if someone had stood outside the synagogue where my parents prayed to welcome them. Thank you. Tonight we are surrounded by stories and by memories. We feel the air thick with the feeling of extra souls in the room. And this comes from our experience of retelling stories, of the intensity with which we bring them to life, to palpable, tangible feeling. But also, it need not only be a weight, it can be a sense of lightness. We are taught that on Shabbat, each of us receives a neshama yetera, an additional soul. That this is something that we look forward to at the end of every week, the blessing of extra soulfulness that we greet with each Shabbat. We welcome those extra souls into the room that we carry with us, expanding our capacity for love, for welcome, and for blessing. We rise in body and in spirit on page 40 as we sing the words of Shalom Aleichem. And we feel this extension of our soul reaching out, maybe ephemerally rather than tangibly, as we had become so accustomed to putting our arms around one another. But let us fill the room with that feeling of open-heartedness. Page 40.
Shalom Aleichem, Malachei השרת מלאכי עליון מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא רחם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא ברכוני לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא צאתם לשלום מלאכי השלום מלאכי עליון מי מלך מלכי המלכים הקדוש ברוך הוא. שבת שלום. שבת שלום.
When you're ready, take a seat. And I invite you to look to the beautiful illuminated manuscript that is our Shabbat program tonight. Every single page serves as backdrop to the musical story that we will tell. And beginning from the very opening of our service, moving through the Psalms of Kabbalat Shabbat, we share these gems of German-Austrian composership meant for the synagogue, meant for the sounds of glorious collections of choirs and beautiful, beautiful voices meant to echo off of the walls. And so as we sing our way through the welcoming of Shabbat with our Kabbalat Shabbat Psalms, you'll hear the strains of Lewandowski, of Birnbaum. We have plenty of Sulzer and Janowski yet to come. But we ask that you turn to page 52 for L'chu Neranena. Come, let us rejoice. Psalm 95.
לכו נרננה לאדוני נריע לצור אישנו נקדמה פניו בתודה בזמירות נריע לו כי אל גדול אדוני ומלך גדול על כל אלוהים אשר בידו מחקרי ארץ ותועפות הרים לו ישמחו השמיים ותגל הארץ ירעם הים ומלואו יעלו שדי וכל אשר בו אז ירננו כל עצי יער לפני אדוני כי בא לשפוט הארץ ישפוט תבל בצל
I feel immense pride and glee at the fact that at CBST, when we're singing these jewels of Lewandowski and Sulzer, everybody sings along. This is not so commonplace with selections that in many musical compilations and cantorial textbooks don't see the light of day, don't get the dust brushed off of them. And here they live with the sound of voices. On page 62, as we sing Psalm 29, this is a regular at CBST, and this is a regular at many other congregations, but it does truly date from before this time and was featured among the German and Austrian synagogues. This is a Western Sephardic melody. It is not an Ashkenazi. It is not a Germanic melody, and yet it was borrowed. To be honest, a little bit of Orientalism, a sense of the exoticism of bringing, such a magnificent piece of music. You can see echoes of this also in synagogue architecture and the way that visual art was portrayed. But also it's unquestionable, and we feel this to this day, the sense of majesty that is resounding every time we say the words Kol Adonai, the voice of God, in this beautiful, beautiful melody. So please rise in body and spirit on page 62.
מזמור לדוד, הבו לאדוני בנעים, הבו לאדוני כבוד ועוז, הבו לאדוני כבוד שמו, השתחוו לאדוני בהדרת קודש, קול אדוני על המים, אל הכבוד הרים, אדוני על מים רבים, אדוני על מים רבים, קול אדוני בכוח, קול אדוני בהדר, קול אדוני שובר ארזים, הישבר אדוני את ארזי הלבנון, וירקידם כמו עגל לבנון וסיריון, כמו בן רמים, כמו בן רמים, קול אדוני חוצב להבות אש, קול אדוני יכיל מדבר, יכיל אדוני מדבר קדש, קול אדוני יחולל עיילות, ויכסוף יערות, ובהיכלו כולו מרכבות, כולו מרכבות, כולו מרכבות. אדוני לא מבול ישב, וישב אדוני מלך לעולם, אדוני עוז לעמו ייתן, אדוני יברך את עמו ושלום.
Please be seated. The melodies, the harmonies, the rich layering of congregational singing elevates these beautiful, beautiful pieces, but some are truly meant for a choir. In the age of German and Austrian synagogue music at its height, to write for a choir was a glorious exercise in architecture. And some of the greatest singers of opera of known in secular and religious music would come to be part of these choirs in these synagogues. And it was to a composer's delight to be able to write for all of these different levels of musicianship. And so for tonight's Lecha Dodi, we are choosing a piece by Louis Lewandowski that was specifically written for choir, beautifully sung by the CBST Community Chorus in 2018, when they could all stand very close together and sing with great aspiration as this composition was meant to be suited. You can be seated. I'm having a glorious synesthetic experience. Watching the video as Eileen and Mitchell and Don and Diane and Cantor Zeidenberg are all singing along in the right harmonies. I'd ask everybody to put your cedarium down for just a second, take a deep breath, and maybe close your eyes. And as we ready ourselves to transition into that Psalm of Shabbat, Psalm 92, I want to take you on a little journey. I want you to imagine yourselves not where you are, not at 30th Street, not in your home, not sitting on a familiar bench. The only thing familiar is the ground beneath your feet, giving you a solid, steady presence as we travel through time and space. I want you to imagine yourself in a great cathedral, a beautiful, beautiful expression of a palace. This is the Oranienburger Straße, the new synagogue of the time in Berlin. And as you step up to its frontage, you are greeted by its magnificent dome, flanked by two smaller domes. For you New Yorkers, imagine Central Synagogue, imagine the Eldridge Street Synagogue. These beautiful borrowings from Islamic architecture that synagogue architects called Jewish style, hearkening back to a different golden age. And they are indeed rimmed with gold. The front of the synagogue is a mosaic of brickwork, carefully chosen, each shade of rose. As you walk in, chandeliers hang from the ceiling. Everything is warmly lit, and it seems like the sanctuary stretches forever. 3,000 people could fit into this main hall. And so your very footsteps, this private and secret viewing that you are being granted, the sound, so light, seems to echo off of every wall. The benches where many, many, many would gather are lovingly polished to a highly satin and shining wood. It seems impossible that the ceiling could be held up so lightly. Its curving arches and trellises, you can't even see the top of the carefully painted constellations in the sky. And yet you can see running down the walls a careful revelation of the iron skeletal structure that holds those soaring arches high. Iron was a new material to be building with at the time. And so it's not commonplace, it's shown off with pride. And as you seat yourself into one of those hundreds of pews, this your own private sanctuary for the space of one moment. You think of how many hands contributed to the building of this edifice. You think of how many prayers were uttered in this space. You think of how many notes dripped like drops of gold from the organ. And you sit there in splendor. In this quiet, in this space outside of space and time outside of time, ask yourself, what is your prayer this evening? What words do you wish to add to the ongoing conversation that has no beginning and no end? Even if it's just a simple thank you. What is it that you are contributing tonight? What would not exist in the world if you had not been here? Tov lehodot l'Adonai, it is good to give thanks to you. And the righteous, they will flourish like a palm tree, like a cedar in Lebanon. They stand rooted in all that has come behind them and all that is yet to come. Page 72, Sadiq Katamar.
מזמור שיר ליום השבת. צדיק כתמר יפרח כרז בלבנון יזכה שתולים בבית אדוני בחצרות אלוהינו יפריחו. עוד ינובון בשיבה דשנים ורעננים יהיו להגיד כי ישר אדוני
As we are called in prayer tonight at the start of our Mariv service, Sam will be leading us in a baruchu that was written by Heinrich Schalit, one of the great German synagogue composers. And it was customary at CBST, we default to the sound of the Shabbat Nusach that gives us the auditory reminder what time it is, how we're supposed to be feeling. But in these great German and Austrian synagogues, you would choose from a panoply of settings for the Baruch Hu, each more beautiful and ornate than the next. And so it is in that spirit that we bring the Shalit tonight. And the congregational response when we all answer Sam's call is the same as it is typically. It is a Western Ashkenazi Nusach. So we invite you to rise in body and spirit on page 78. Please be seated. In the spirit of Ma'ariv Aravim, this prayer that honors the natural rhythms of the planet around us, we bring forward a prayer in particular for the COP26. This is not modern history. This is happening right now. This is the UN's Global Climate Summit, which is going into extra innings as we speak. And so in the past, during these annual summits that the UN holds, we as a congregation have prayed for their success. And this particular prayer was written by CBS team member Liz Galst. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, granter of insight and maker of miracles at this season and in times past. Teach the leaders of all the world's nations that human well-being and the well-being of the planet are intimately intertwined. Focus their attentions on the future so we may deliver the earth intact to the next generation. Inspire us all to learn new skills, invent new processes, and exert our political power to safeguard the earth you created with love. Open the gates of wisdom and dig deep the wells of action. Blessed are you, Adonai, who emboldens people to make great changes for good.
ומעביר יום ומביא לילה ומבדיל בין יום ובין לילה אדוני צבאות שמו אל חי וקיים תמיד ימלוך עלינו לעולם ועד ברוך אתה אדוני המעריב ערבים
Page 86.
אהבת עולם בית ישראל עמך אהבת תורה ומצוות חוקים ומשפטים אותנו לימדת על כן אדוני אלוהינו בשוכבנו ובקומנו נשיח בחוקיך ונשמח בדברי תורתך ובמצוותיך תורתך אל תסיר ממנו לעולמים. ברוך אתה אדוני אוהב עמו ואהבת את אדוני אלוהיך בכל לבבך ובכל נפשך ובכל מאודך, והיו הדברים האלה אשר אנוכי מצווך היום על לבביך, ושיננתם לבניך, ודיברת בם בשבתך בביתך, ובלכתך בדרך, ובשוכבך ובקומך, וקשרתם לאות על ידיך, והיו לטוטפות בין עיניך, וכתבתם על מזוזות ביתך ובשעריך.
Please continue with the biblical passages of the Ve'ahavta at your own speed through page 92.
Adonai Elohechem Amen.
It was customary to bring in great classical music, especially great German classical music, into the synagogue. And perhaps there's no greater classical composer than Johann Sebastian Bach. We sing Mi Chamocha to an excerpt of one of the great chorales from the St. Matthew Passion that our own Ira Rosenblum, who's sitting here tonight with us, arranged a few years ago, and we love it. And it is probably one of the most beautiful melodies in existence. So we will hear the CBST chorus singing this from a couple of years ago.
Oh
שנאמר כי פדה אדוני את יעקב וגאלו מיד חזק ממנו ברוך אתה אדוני גאל ישראל אמן.
We pray for protection. Hashkivenu, spread over us your sheltering presence. Page 98.
השכיבנו אדוני אלוהינו לשלום והעמידנו מלכנו לחיים ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ותקננו בעצה טובה מלפניך והושיענו למען שמך והגן בעדנו והסר מעלינו אויב דבד וחרב ורב ויגון והסר שטן מלפנינו ומאחרינו ובצל כנפיך תסתירנו כי אל שומרנו ומצילנו כי אל מלך חנון ופרוס עלינו סוכת שלומך ברוך אתה אדוני ועל כל העמים ועל ירושלים.
Please rise in body and spirit on page 102 for Vishamru.
ושמרו בני ישראל את השבת לעשות את השבת לדורותם ברית עולם. ובין בני ישראל אותי לעולם, כי ששת ימים עשה אדוני את השמיים ואת הארץ. וביום השביעי שבת ויהי
Following our recitation of the Chatzi Kaddish, this is the white space between the notes. This is a blank canvas, an opportunity for you to choose. Will tonight you move through the Matbea Tfilah, the order of the blessings of the Amidah as they are recited on Shabbat? Will you turn instead to a contemporary interpretation? On page 124 begins a beautiful lyric poem by Marge Piercy. Or will you just enjoy the quiet? And whenever you feel complete, you can take a seat. Chatzi Kaddish begins on page 104.
יתגדל ויתקדש שמי רבה נלמד ירקירותי והמליך מלכותי בחייכון וביומייכון וחיי דכל בית ישראל בעגלה בעגלה ובזמן קריב וימרו אמן יהי שמי רבה מברך לעלם ולעלמי עלמיה יתברך וישתבח, ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא, ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמד קודשה. ברכו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה. ושכחתה ונחמתה, תמירן בעלה ויאמרו
Amen. If you are still in the midst of your personal prayers, please don't stop. Just feel them lifted up by the sounds of one of the greatest of all German composers, Schubert. And as Joyce mentioned earlier, it was delightfully commonplace to bring in these beautiful pieces of modernist classical works to add to the flavor of prayer and of worship. And Schubert himself was a great fan of Solomon Sulzer and would come to services just to hear his music.
Über allen Gipfeln ist Ruhe, in allen Wipfeln spürst du kaum einen Hauch. Die Vöglein schweigen im Walde, warte nur, balde
page 118.
Shalom bimromav. Oseh shalom bimromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Hu ya'aseh shalom. Aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel ve'imru
Our prayers turn from the personal to the communal. We prayed for peace, and now we pray for healing on page 130. Mishaberach imotenu Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel, Bilha, v'Zilpah, v'avotenu Avraham, Yitzchak, v'Yaakov, hu yivarech v'yirapeh et hacholim. May the one who blessed our ancestors Sarah, Rivka, Leah, Rachel, Bilha, and Zilpah, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaakov bless us too. Bless and heal all those who are ill. Bless Kenneth Adler, Ken Binder, Diane Getty, Sidney Goldfisher, Ann Gregory, Stacy Harris, Maya Orley Bat Esther, Joel Moses, Teresita Fang, Mark Polikoff, Rose Wanan, Yehudit Bat Yirmiyahu, Udvora, Dov Ber, and all of those who we carry in our hearts tonight or who we whisper out loud at this time. May all of these souls be blessed with a full and complete healing, a healing of spirit and a healing of body, together with all those who are ill among the Jewish people and among the world. May those who will not be healed on this earth be blessed with nights free from suffering and days filled with peace. May God grant strength and comfort to those who care for the sick. May God help us to find hope and courage as we face fear and loss. May all who are ill be surrounded by the love of friends, loving companions, families, and community. And let us say,
Amen.
tonight, to offer the prayer for our country, we are delighted that the newest Jew at CBST will be reciting these words in a Beit Din made up of Rabbi Marisa James, myself, and his Rosh Beit Din, our Cooperberg Master Rabbinical Intern, Dave Yadid. Chase Purdy became Jewish this week and immersed in the waters of the mikveh and will be known among our people as Shimshon ben Avraham v'Sarah. So Chase will be leading us in the prayer for our country tonight.
This is the prayer for our country by Rabbi Ayala Cohen. Our God and God of our ancestors, bless this country and all who dwell within it. Help us to experience the blessings of our lives and circumstances, to be vigilant, compassionate, and brave. Strengthen us when we are afraid. Help us to channel our anger so that it motivates us to action. Help us to feel our fear so that we do not become numb. Help us to be generous with others so that we raise each other up. Help us to be humble in our fear, knowing that as vulnerable as we feel, there are those at greater risk, and that it is our holy work to stand with them. Help us to taste the sweetness of liberty, to not take for granted the freedoms won in generations past or in recent days, to heal and nourish our democracy, that it may be like a tree planted by the water, whose roots reach down to the stream. It need not fear drought when it comes. Its leaves are always green.
We answer to Chase, Amen. And Chase, as I told you earlier this week, on this particular Shabbat, when we try to bring to life so much that was lost, it is so moving to know and to be a part of those who are choosing Judaism every day, despite the constant of anti-Semitism that has been a feature of being Jewish for so many generations, despite the outward and external obstacles of hatred and xenophobia and homophobia and transphobia that challenge us every day. You have chosen us, and we have chosen you, and we all choose blessing together. And so I want to offer you this blessing, Shimshon. Mishaberach imotenu va'avotenu, may the one who blessed our ancestors Sarah and Avraham, Yitzchak and Rivka, Yaakov, Leah and Rachel, Bilhah and Zilpah, bless you as you continue your journey in becoming Jewish, being Jewish and beyond. You who have brought such insight, devotion, and compassion to your study of Torah, may the world always meet you with such dignity and grace. May God bless you with every opportunity to learn and to flourish and become ever more yourself. May you continue to grow as a Jew and as a human being in health, in wisdom, and in abundant spirit. May God bless the work of your hands and heart as you strive in your way to create a better and more peaceful time for your family, for your Jewish community, and for our world. And let us all say together,
Amen.
Amen, and Mazel Tov Shimshon. For those of you in the room who are jewels among God's crown, who has chosen Judaism as adults, you know the difficulty of this journey. For those of you in this room who became Jewish in times of COVID, it has only been more challenging and required more passion and dedication. And I feel so unbelievably moved every time it is my privilege to welcome somebody who has chosen us into the community of their heart and spirit. Thanks, Chase. We continue with Kaddish Shalem on page 138. Please rise in body and spirit if it is your custom.
יתגדל ויתקדש שם רבה, אמן. ועמד דברי קירותי, והמליך מלכותי, וחייכון וימיכון ובחי לכל בית ישראל, בעגלה ובזמן קריב, ואמרו, אמן. יהי שמי רבה מברך, לעולם ולעולם ועלמיה. יתברך וישתבח ויתפאר ויתרומם ויתנשא ויתהדר ויתעלה ויתהלל שמי דקודשה ברכו לעילה מן כל ברכתה ושירתה תושבחתה ונחמתה דמירן בעלמה ואמרו אמן תתקבל צולות הון ובעוד הון דכל ישראל כל דם ובהון די וישמעיה ואמרו אמן יהי שלום הרב אמין שמיה וחיים עלינו ועל כל ישראל ואמרו אמן עושה שלום במרומיו הוא יעשה שלום עלינו ועל כל ישראל ועל כל יושבי תבל ואמרו אמן.
Please be seated. And tonight, as promised, the words of Torah take many shimmering forms. We read them, we sing them, we recite them, and sometimes they are given to us in the gift of music. And so it is so perfectly appropriate that on this Shabbat, we are taught in words of Torah by our beloved music director, Joyce Rosenzweig, our fabulous cantorial intern, Sam Rosen, a story that took my breath away when they told it to me the first time, and a story to which I can't wait to listen, a Devar Shira.
Shabbat Shalom, everybody. So the story begins in 1994, a very long time ago, but that was actually the year that I became music director at CBST. And believe it or not, Sam was 4 years old, and I was the music director of CBST. So, okay, here we. He was alive. So that very year, I had the privilege of having a sabbatical from HUC that I got to spend one semester in Israel. And during that semester, I had the privilege of working with Dr. Eliyahu Schleifer, who is one of the most respected and just most amazing musicologists in the world. And I used to work with him every day. We worked with the cantorial and rabbinic students very closely, and we created all sorts of amazing projects together. Over the semester that I was there, he received a phone call from Rabbi John Levy, who was the rabbi at a huge synagogue in Melbourne, how you pronounce it, Melbourne, Australia. So the rabbi called and asked Dr. Schleifer, who knows everything about German synagogue music, and he said, I have a problem. I've discovered these cylinders, these old recordings that the music director at my synagogue for many years here in Melbourne must have brought over. He placed in an attic when he came, and they've sat there for many years, and he died. And they've come to us, and we don't know what to do with them, and we're not sure what their origin is. We will fly you over and see what you can do to help us with this mystery. So he did go over, and the rest is kind of history, which we're just delighted to talk about tonight. It turns out that these recordings are probably the only recordings of voices, the actual voices of people singing in between 1928 and 1932 when they were made. It's a miracle. So let me just tell you a little bit about these recordings and what was the purpose. So the idea was that they would record all of their music for the entire liturgical year because, the gramophone was brand new, and they were a cutting-edge synagogue, and they wanted to show that they had the capacity to do this. But also, they wanted to share the particular kind of music that they did, which included hiring a 100-voice choir and using the foremost Jewish opera singers from throughout Europe to be the soloists. And what would they do with these recordings? They would send them to all of the smaller congregations throughout Germany so that they could play them on their gramophone and have great music, because nobody else could afford this. It was all funded. So it was this amazing undertaking that took 4 years, and they recorded music, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of pieces of music. And they were played. And Sam is going to talk a little bit about how long they were even played. The music director of the big Reform synagogue in Berlin was the one who pulled this all together. It was sponsored by them. Much of the music is in Hebrew, but more of it is in German. As one could imagine of the Reform community at that time, which was very much an assimilated community in many ways. These were leading politicians, musicians, scientists of the Berlin community, and they wanted a service which had a lot of German in it, had a lot of classical music in it, and they could feel a lot of pride and feel very different from their more orthodox neighbors. So Dr. Hermann Schildberger was the music director, and he escaped in 1939, narrowly escaped, and it turns out that he took these with him at that time. He moved to Australia, and nobody ever thought about him again. No one ever, most of the people on this recording, I've been told, were killed in the next 10 years, and the recordings just sat in the attic until 1994. And they were reproduced, they were edited, they were cleaned up, and we are going to have the privilege of hearing some excerpts from that tonight. So we will begin. Our first excerpt is the Deutsche Kedusha. So I don't know if this is familiar to any of you, but the Deutsche Kedusha is still the Kedusha that is sung in several synagogues in the United States to this day. Baltimore Hebrew Congregation, and there's many, many others that are of German descent, and they've kept this. So the liturgy is all in German. The responses are in Hebrew, and you will recognize the responses. This is written by the great Louis Lewandowski. So Jason, take it away. Anybody recognize the soloist's voice? If anybody that's an opera or leader lover, that was Joseph Schmidt, the great Joseph Schmidt, the most brilliant German tenor. So, please.
Thank you. And I'll just give a little more history of these recordings. As Joyce was saying, they were produced between 1928 and 1932. So we wanted to really just focus on the fact that this is over 90 years ago that these were created. And as Joyce said, the excitement for the technology is what sort of inspired Hans Lachmann Maas, who was a distinguished publisher and an active leader of the Berlin Reform community, to actually sponsor this project himself. And his intent, as Joyce said, was for it to be used throughout Germany in different areas to enhance the services. And you can hear the pride in the music, in the German music tradition. And Joyce and I were always also talking about how radical these groups were. You know, on the outside, you know, it's not as if they were, you know, living apart and like ascetics. No, they were part of the community, but it was radical for the time, considering themselves to be fully German, shunning the ideas of Jewish day schools, and even holding their Shabbat services on Sundays. So,
Oh, yeah.
definitely.
And there's still some.
Yeah.
And there's still some synagogues in the U.S. who still, I don't know if you know about that, but I know in St. Louis there's a synagogue, a big synagogue that has services on Sundays. It's not uncommon. It's not unheard of. I see some heads nodding. Yeah.
And in addition, they were some of the first to change the pronunciation to the Sephardi pronunciation, which we heard tonight. So as you know, many to this day Ashkenazi communities use the Ashkenazi pronunciation, but they were really, you know, searching for that sort of refined, in their minds, this was more of an authentic pronunciation. So they were willing to go out on the limb and change the way that the words were said. And another thing we wanted to emphasize is that on this CD, on the two CDs, that there are like at least 20 tracks on both. I mean, there are many tracks on both CDs, and it's not just Lewandowski and other German Jewish composers, but also Beethoven, Bach, Schubert, Bruckner, and others. They all in the same project. It wasn't a separate project, and intended for synagogue use. And we also, you know, there's a booklet that comes with the CDs that taught us, you know, taught me, I guess, most of these things. I feel like there's sort of a passing of this story in a way. And we know that they were used in London at the Second Conference of the World Union for Progressive Judaism on a Friday night, in July of 1930. So, you know, what we've just heard was heard by them, and we were also talking about how much we see of ourselves in them and their choices. And even after their synagogue was burned, they continued using these recordings until 1942, until the very end.
The next excerpt we'd like to share with you is called Aus der Tiefe. I think you'll recognize it. It's German. It's in German, and yeah, you'll recognize it. But it was the original Aramaic words were not used, and instead it was a translation to the vernacular. And the soloist is the great baritone Friedrich Lechner, and who was very well known in Germany and actually had a second career after he fled Germany, and he came to New York City, and he was the cantor of Central Synagogue for many years. Made lots of recordings and sang at the Metropolitan Opera as well. And you hear that organ, that gorgeous, huge pipe organ. What a thrill to share this with you all. These recordings are truly precious artifacts of Jewish history and really allow us to connect ourselves in today. Who could imagine? How could they have imagined that nearly 100 years later we would be sitting together and connecting to them in this very profound way, hearing their actual voices? It's mind-blowing to me. And it's really a privilege to get have a glimpse in such a way into what tefillah must have been like for this synagogue and for the German Reform community back then, not so many years ago, but such a different time, and not such a different time. We're going to conclude tonight by hearing Joseph Schmidt again singing with the choir the conclusion of the Ne'ilah service for Yom Kippur, the Shema Yisrael. Thank you, Jason. A blessing, and will continue to be a blessing to all of us. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you, Joyce. I was teasing them earlier this week that this has all the right premise for a new Indiana Jones movie. And personally, as we move through the service tonight, as we reach back to bring forward what is not usually done at CBST, right? This is not, for those of you who are new, this is not our average. This is something extraordinary, and yet, in many ways, this is our average. I'm thinking of the ways that we brought forward our archival recordings to hear the voices of our beautiful chorus preserved in time to teach us something that we had no idea what there was yet to learn. To imagine us in this great tradition of Jewish communities who embraced technological advances to enrich their Jewish lives, who saw Judaism as an ongoing story of creativity and change and experimentation, and always, always braiding itself back in with tradition, means that this beautiful German synagogue choir, whose voices are all we have left for so many of them, is played in an LGBTQ synagogue, accompanied by the sounds of a community chorus who wears rainbow talitot, is heard by all of us as we move into whatever the world holds next for us, even the very tiniest of us. This is going to be a part of our stories in the way that we experience Shabbat. And it's never very far away from us. We move to the conclusion of our service on page 140 with a tune by Solomon Solzer that we at CBST and so many congregations around the Jewish world sing this setting. The words of this prayer are inextricable from this tune, and the words that we say are a unique, a singular composition that reflect the theology and the tradition and the creativity of our time that we have contributed at CBST. So please rise in body and spirit as we chant Aleinu L'Shabach.
עלינו לשבח לאדון הכל, לתת קדושה, צר בראשית, שברא אותנו בצלמו, ונפח בנו את נשמת חיינו, שהעמיק אותנו בלימוד תורתו, וקידשנו במצוותיה, ואנחנו קוראים ומשתחווים ומודים לפני מלך מלכי המלכים, הקדוש ברוך הוא, שהוא נוטה שמיים ויוסר ארץ, ומושב יקרו בשמיים ממעל, ושכינתו זו בגובי מרומים. הוא אלוהינו אין עוד, אמת מלכנו אפס זולתו, ככתוב בתורתו, וידעת היום והשבות אל לבבך, כי אדוני הוא האלוהים בשמיים ממעל, ועל הארץ מתחת אין עוד. ונאמר והיה אדוני למלך על כל הארץ, היום ההוא יהיה אדוני אחד, ושמו אחד.
Please be seated. When I am dead, even then I will still love you. I will wait in these poems. When I am dead, even then I am still listening to you. I will still be making poems for you out of silence. Silence will be falling into that silence. It is building music. Our love, our hearts go out to those members of the CBST community who have experienced recent loss. To CBST member Robin Chattel on the death of her cousin Wendy Chattel de Ulysse, Zichrona Livracha, who died on November 5th. To CBST members Laurel and Owen Boone on the loss of Laurel's parent of choice, Dr. Paul Gans, Zichrono Livracha, who died on November 7th. And to CBST members Kate Foster Kaplov and Jesse Foster Kaplov on the death of Kate's grandmother, Dorothy Goodman, Zichrona Livracha, who died on November 8th. We remember with love those CBST members whose yahrzeits occur in this week: William Johnson, Jeffrey Klotz, Rose Lachter, Jay Newman, and Larry Utal. And our family and friends Colette Albuquerque Muscat, Jonathan Shervin, A. Alexander Dubin, Barton Farber, Feliciano Fusicante, Pamela Khan Baca, Matthew Joseph Levine, Parvin Namdar, Mark Rosenberg, Max Scheiner, Stanley Tallis. And we offer condolences to the family, friends, and communities of all those who are dying each day from the COVID-19 pandemic. As of today, the total numbers of deaths were 34,665 in New York City, 57,410 in New York State, 780,102 across the United States, and 5,088,497 worldwide. If it is your custom to be standing when mourners' Kaddish is recited, if you are in a period of mourning, like Shiva, Shloshim, the 11 months following the loss of someone you love, or if it is your custom to stand with the mourners, please do so at this time, and we recite Kaddish together on page 150. Yitgadal v'yitkadash shemei Rabbah.
Amen.
Be'alma divrach yirutei ve'amlich malchutei. B'chayechon uvyomechon uvchaye dechol beit Yisrael. Ba'agala uvizman kariv v'imru Amen. Yehi shmei Rabbah mevarach leolam u'almei almaya. Yitbarach v'yishtabach v'yitpa'ar v'yitromam v'yitnaseh. V'yitadar v'yitaleh v'yitalel. Shemei dekudsha brichu. Le'ela min kol birchata v'shirata. Tush bechata v'nechemata. Da'amiran be'alma v'yimru. Amen. Yehi shlama Rabbah min shemaya. V'chaim aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael v'yimru. Amen. Oseh shalom b'mromav. Hu ya'aseh shalom aleinu ve'al kol Yisrael ve'al kol yoshvei tevel v'yimru. Amen.
Amen.
Zichronam livracha, may each and every one, may they be a blessing.
Amen.
It is now my honor to invite up the president of the CBST Board of Directors, Sabrina Farber, to offer our community some announcements this evening.
Thank you, Rabbi. I missed you all last week. I hope you missed me. Shabbat Shalom. It is so amazing to see so many people in person here in the synagogue, to welcome you all on live stream. And it feels like a regular old Friday night service. I gotta say, that is like an amazing, amazing thing to admit. What a gorgeous service tonight. This is an amazing group of clergy that we are so blessed to have. The idea that we decided to celebrate this gorgeous music, and we have such talented folks around, people like Joyce Rosenzweig and Sam Rosen, who can pull together this amazing panoply of history and share with us those recordings. I'm sorry, but I got shivers. Did anyone else get shivers? Some of us grew up in synagogues that played that kind of music and that had big choirs and very formal reform kind of traditions. It was amazing to hear those pieces. So thank you so much, Joyce and Sam, for bringing them to us. You really helped us keep that music alive in such a very, very significant way. Thank you so much to our Baal Tefillah cantorial intern, Sam Rosen, and obviously he's in the middle of, I don't know, studying for exams, writing his final thesis, and he's also learning all this new music for us. I'm sorry, but we are an extraordinarily fortunate congregation, as well as Joyce, who is always bringing us new music, new information, and definitely teaching us more about Jewish music. And of course, Rabbi Rapport, we are so delighted that you are here as our rabbi, and it pains me to think that there will be a day when you are no longer on our bima, but I do have to tell you that we are absolutely so delighted to have you here and presiding in the most gorgeous way and bringing us together here. It's such an enormous privilege for me as president to work with and honor such an amazing team of professionals. There's so many people out here tonight. I can't name people in person because if I don't name everybody, then somebody will get upset with me, so I'm not going to say anything. Except I do have to say one person, which is I'm delighted to welcome Rebbitzin Randy Weingarten, who is here in the sanctuary, and this is, I believe, the first time since Rabbi Kleinbaum departed on her sabbatical, so we are incredibly lucky to welcome her here this evening. It's been a rough couple of weeks in the media for you, my dear, but we are glad you're back in the bosom of your family and in your community, so we love you, we love you. And speaking of special people here, we cannot forget our beloved cantor Steve Zeidenberg. Of course, there is Sam over here paying obeisance to Steve. The two of them used to sing in the choir together and obviously have shared many, many moments, and I'm sure many teachings as well. It is lovely to see you here tonight. Please join us tomorrow at 10 a.m. for our Shabbat morning services led by cantorial intern Sam Rosen and Cooperberg Ritmaster rabbinical intern Dave Yadid, who will be doing service leadership and delivering the Devar. And speaking of Cooperberg Ritmaster rabbinical intern Dave Yadid, you can also join him tomorrow evening for Havdalah at 7 p.m., which is a new time. So remember, the clocks have changed, so Havdalah 7 p.m. tomorrow. Join us on Monday, November 15th. This is really very serious, and I'm going to do my very best to say everything I need to say about it. If I make any mistakes, Rabbi Rapport will correct me when she's back. Monday night, we'll be having a webinar from 6 to 7:15, which will explain to folks how to how to sponsor Afghan refugees. So you can help these refugees by becoming a sponsor for those who are seeking humanitarian parole in the U.S. It's the most bizarre term, I agree. Parole, these are people not getting out of jail, but okay. CBST and our partners at Seeds of Peace are looking for sponsors right now. And if you come to this webinar on Monday and listen in, you can hear from our CBST experts, Noemi Maslia, who is a board member and the ARC Immigration Clinic co-chair, as well as an immigration attorney, Aliyah Zaveri, and also our clinic coordinator at the ARC, Noah Habib. You can also share personal insights from Rabbi Rapport, who will speak with her husband, David Moser, as they are currently in the process of acting as humanitarian aid sponsors. And then join us on Thursday, November 18th at 2:20 for a very, very special Zoom. This will be JTS Rabbinical School senior sermon for our very own David Schmidt-Chapman, beloved member, and he will be graduating from Rabbinical School. However, fear not if you're busy at work on Thursday at 2:20. This will be recorded so you can listen to it later. We are very, very excited to listen to what David has to say, and CBST members are invited. That you can check the CBST website calendar for the Zoom link. And speaking of calendars, this time for real, I know last week there was an announcement, and I think the week before. We've really finalized this date. Please, please mark your calendars and pin Monday, December 13th at 7 p.m. Join Seth Rudetsky for a magical evening Broadway at CBST. This evening will be a combination event. So again, as Rabbi Rapport talked about us being, experimenting and using technology, we're continuing to experiment and use technology. There'll be an in-person component. There will also be a Zoom component. In-person tickets are on sale right now, but there will be a limited number, so don't miss out. In other words, get your tickets now. Thank you for helping us build community as we continue to pursue Tikkun Olam. Shabbat Shalom.
Thank you, Sabrina. I have no edits. Only one more thank you. Thank you, Jason Zivik. The multimodal nature of tonight's service wouldn't have been possible if we didn't have a genius behind the keyboard and the mixer and whatever else you have up there. And we are immensely grateful. Thank you. Some closing words tonight. We will close in the manner of German and Austrian synagogues with a benediction for our congregation. And we will do this in two ways. The first will be words from Vienna from CBST members Marty Pearl and Richard Tessler, who created a special greeting for us from the Judenplatz. And then following, we will offer a more traditional benediction for the entire community.
Thank you, Rabbi Rapport, for asking me to say a few words to you and the congregation tonight on the anniversary of Kristallnacht. Rich and I are here in Vienna, the birthplace of my parents. We were asked to attend the opening of the Kindertransport exhibit at the Jewish Museum here on the Judenplatz. As you know, my mom was on a Kindertransport to the United Kingdom in 1939. In addition to the Kindertransport Museum opening, Rich and I attended, we were invited to the opening of the Wall of Names of Shoah victims that have the names of 64,000 Jewish children, women, and men that perished during the Shoah, including the names of my grandparents, great-grandparents, great-aunts, and uncles. So it's been a very emotional yet important week.
And we're glad to finally be here in Vienna. It took 2 generations for them to come to terms with the atrocities that they committed and witnessed, but at least they're acknowledging what they did, and they're trying to make some sort of amends. And one of those ways is that they placed wreaths at the memorial here in the Judenplatz. So we just want to thank you again,
And Shabbat Shalom,
Shalom from Vienna, and we'll see you soon. Bye.
Marty and Rich also wanted to give a special shout out to everybody who traveled on the CBST in Europe trip and took those steps with them. This is an amazing demonstration of the way that history can play into our present, the way that history affects our future. And to be able to see that backdrop from Vienna is a very special gift. We thank you, Marty, and we thank you, Rich. I invite the congregation to rise in body and spirit. As we close our services tonight with a special benediction.
Adonai oz le'amo yiten. Adonai yevarech, yevarech et amo
Adonai gives strength to our people. Adonai bless your people with peace. Our closing song tonight on page 155 is Ein Kelohenu, and we are delighted to be joined on the bima by Cantor Steve Zeidenberg.
Ein Kelohenu, ein Adonenu, ein Kemalkeinu, ein Keoshienu,
Sit back down, you're on vacation. We look forward to this special Kiddush every year. This is not your average Kiddush. This is the Kurt Weill Kiddush, the son of a cantor, the inheritor, the legacy of this beautiful German, Austrian synagogue music who had an impact on the way we think about music as a whole. Please join us, follow along. It is a CBST favorite on page 156 of your Siddur.
Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Borei peri hagafen Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam Asher kitshanu b'mitzvotav v'ratzavanu v'shabbat kodsho me'ahava uvratzon hinchilanu zikaron lema'asei v'reishit ki hu yom techila lemikra'ei kodesh zeicher litziat Mitzrayim Kivanu v'chavarta ve'otanu kidashta im kol ha'amim ve'shabbat kodshecha me'ahava uvratzon hinchaltanu Baruch atah Adonai Mekadesh HaShabbat Amen
L'chaim. We extend our hands, we extend our spirits from all different time zones, transoceanically, towards this source of blessing. Join us in Motzi.
Baruch Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam hamotzi lechem min haaretz.
Amen. Shabbat shalom. Wait, stop the postlude. Stop the postlude. I forgot the Kiddush sponsorships. I was so carried away. Jason, are we still on live stream? Yes, excellent. Okay. I will sponsor Kiddush next week in honor of forgetting the Kiddush sponsorships. Tonight's live stream, everybody can sit, is sponsored by the Shapiro Farber family in memory of the 5th Yortzeit of Barton Farber, Zichrono Livracha, father, father-in-law, and grandfather. A product of his generation, his advice even to his 2 daughters was be your own man. We love you and miss you every day. By Diane Hess and Abby Tiger in loving memory of Diane's mother, Shirley Hess, Zichrono Livracha, on the occasion of her 2nd Yortzeit. By Noemi Maslia in celebration of the publication of Barbara Cohen's latest stunning art book, Our Provincetown. I am so proud. By Gina Schmeling in loving memory of Richard Samuel, Zichrono Livracha, who died this week at the age of 92. A Chicago mensch, the words charisma, graciousness, kindness, devotion only begin to describe him. By Rick Landman in honor of Henry Landman, my father, who lit the CBST Shabbat candles 7 years ago. He and Grandpa were 2 of the Jews sent to Dachau the day after Kristallnacht. By Bernd Linder and Regina Linder, to honor the 51st Yortzeit and 120th anniversary of the birth of our father Baruch. Kristallnacht changed our family's path. By Debbie Metrick and Randy Axelrod to honor Dr. Annika Cooper's special birthday. We are so excited to be able to celebrate with you in person. By Linda Solomon and Bonnie Siegel, in observance of Veterans Day, we commemorate our fathers, Max Solomon and Solomon Sonny Siegel, who served during World War II, and Linda's grandfather, Louis Solomon, who died from the 1918 flu after serving in World War I. By Leah Tracton and Regina Linder, to wish Kol HaKavod to Lee Goldberg, who completed the 2021 New York City Marathon. By Sherry Clemens, Liz Diamond, Judith Hollander, and one very grateful rabbi who appreciates everyone sticking around to support one another's simchas and commemorations. Good Shabbos.